Hi, welcome back. ProGeologist here with GeoEarth Solutions. In this video, we're going to continue in our intro to ArcGIS Pro, and we're going to look at symbology. For those who are used to symbology, maybe you've played around in QGIS or used to ArcMap, you'll be familiar with symbology. There are a couple different nuances as we dive into ArcGIS Pro. For those who are new and are getting into GIS, especially for the geosciences, symbology is going to be a very key thing in helping to convey information. So what exactly is symbology? Symbology refers to the way GIS features can be displayed or exhibited on a map. The symbology dictates not only the size, the shapes, and the colors of certain features, but it also conveys the rules and sets the conventions by which features may be displayed. In short, one could actually summarize it as symbology is not just for looks, although they may look pretty darn good if you think about all those maps out there that are gorgeous. On the other hand, if it's not just for looks, it's really about conveying meaning. What do you want your map reader to understand? What do you want them to really absorb and take in and observe? That is the key to symbology. So let's take a look at symbology in ArcGIS Pro. Well, as stated, we're going to take a look at symbology this time. And as we do so, we're going to start by pulling in city limits. We're focused again on the Fresno and or Clovis area in the Central Valley of California. And that's something that we looked at the very beginning in the very first intro video that was posted for ArcGIS Pro. And so I've already got that layering in here. You can see the city of Fresno, city of Clovis bounds, and some surrounding areas just as well. We're actually going to start with something a little different. We're going to do a bit of a pro tip here right out of the chute. And let's say that I wanted to focus just on Fresno and Clovis. Now, there are a couple ways I could do that. I could select these and then export them and create a new file. But those who have dealt with GIS before actually know that I can go over here to the contents pane and I can choose the file. And by doing so, I'm going to then right click and go to properties. As I come in here to properties and my window opens up, I can set a definition query. And so I'm going to definition query. I'm going to create a new definition query. And I've got all of my fields that are associated with that layer. So I know this is not direct symbology, but this is something that is going to be very useful, especially if you're trying to filter out and avoid duplicate data sets or too many data sets. Now what I've done in this case, I've chosen the city name. I'm going to choose a drop down here. And rather than dealing with the equals to is I'm going to come in here and say includes the values. Now, I could manually type these in. I could even start a SQL statement. We're not going to get that advanced. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up this drop down. Lo and behold, there are boxes that I can toggle on. I'm going to choose Fresno and Clovis. Now pay close attention. You'll see Sanger here, Fowler, the surrounding areas. Once I hit apply and say okay, those surrounding areas go away. So now I'm solely focused on Clovis and Fresno. You notice that my layer still has some symbology that I need to deal with, right? And so what I can do is I can, again, right click, and I'm going to go to symbology. That's going to open up another pane on my right-hand side. It's that symbology pane. I could reclassify and I could remove these. Watch this. I can right click and I can remove Kalinga altogether. And I could do that one by one by one by one. The other thing that I could do is I could actually come back in here and I can go through and I can reclassify, right? If I say add all values, this button right here under classes, it's going to take in only the two values that my definition query is bringing in. Therefore, I now only have Fresno and Clovis in this area. You'll note on the right-hand side, I've gone and I've added those and I've got other values that are present. On the left-hand side, my contents pane, all other values is grayed out. It is an option. We're not doing a layout and making a map here, but if I were to make a map, this value would show up. So if you do not want that there out of habit, what you can do is come back to the symbology page and pane, and you can right click and we can actually remove the all other values. Now you notice Clovis and Fresno are the only two remaining. And in my contents pane, Clovis and Fresno are again the only two symbols remaining in this layer. So that easily set that. So I am narrowed in on Clovis and Fresno. If I needed to undo this, I could. I could go and I could right click and I could come back here to properties, go to my definition query, and I could either delete this definition query or I could just toggle it off and it will bring back all the cities, but I will have to re-symbolize those. And that would be done again by coming into the symbol page and saying add all values. Now, doing that may actually change the original coloration or colors that were set for these features, but that's just something to take note of. It's an easy way to get things out, an easy way to get things back in as you see fit. Now, what we're going to do, we're stuck here, we're looking at unique values. That is just fine, but I want to set a couple of symbols specific to Fresno and specific to Clovis. Now, I'm going to focus on Clovis for a couple of reasons, because we're going to pull another layer here in a minute. I'm going to go to Clovis, and I'm going to come down here in the Symbology page or pane, and you notice that I just clicked on that purplish color for Clovis, and I'm now in the area where I can format the polygon symbol for Clovis. And if I wanted to do just a thick black outline, I could set that. And I'm going to choose that right here, right now. You notice once I click that, there's no apply. It applies automatically. Clovis is now outlined in this thick black line. Fresno remains in the pink. That is just fine. I'm going to leave that as is. However, if I wanted to change this, if I wanted to use that thick black outline, and I wanted to have a fill, I could actually come back up here in the symbol pane, again, selected for the format for the polygon symbol for Clovis, and I can go to properties, and you'll notice there are a couple of options here. You notice color. This is the fill for the color. Right now, there is no color applied. Just for kicks and giggles, we're going to apply a color. And then we're going to undo it. Let's just go ahead and choose this tourmaline green, good old geologic color. Going to hit apply this time, and boom, now we have tourmaline green in there. If we want to undo that, or we want to make sure there is no color filling in, we can do exactly that, and we can apply. Okay, a couple of options there, a couple of things that we can do. I really am going to bring a fill in here. I'm going to bring kind of a bluish color. I'm going to apply that to the city of Clovis. And now I'm going to do one other thing. And I could manipulate this a little bit more if I wanted to under the different layers. So you can see my solid fill. I can mess with this a little bit. I can mess with the output for an overprint. And I could even come back in here and, readjust those different colors. So there are settings that I can totally mess around with in here for the Symbology. I can add an effect. So I could come in here, I could buffer it, make it glow. I could rotate it. I can add all sorts of things. Notice there are a couple of exclamation points here, warning saying, hey, this is not going to work so well for what you want to do because of the nature of this being a polygon. So anyhow, there is one way that I can manipulate, if you will, these colors and the Symbology. Now, in my contents pane here on the left, having my city limits layer or feature class selected, there is another thing that I can do. Remember our ribbon, it is dynamic. So if I come up here, notice how I have feature layer, labeling, and data. I'm going to choose feature layer. I'm going to add some transparency to this, and I'm just manually going to type this in. I'm going to add a 30% transparency. Now, if I wanted to do this just for Clovis, this will not work, because what's going to happen is I'm actually going to apply this, hit enter, and it applies it to the entirety of that layer, right? 30% is okay. Maybe let's go 45. And all I'm trying to do is just get a light coloration going on here. I'm going to come back to my map tab. Let's work with that for now. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to come into my catalog button or my catalog pane, and I'm going to choose Clovis water wells. These are wells that are sourced from a project that I worked on for the city of Clovis in mapping their municipal water wells. And just getting them on a map. They had addresses that they essentially didn't have geocoded, but I went out and tagged the latitude and the longitudes of these things, as well as the addresses, just to make sure that they were in the right location, the right place, and I guess you could say at the right time. To add this, since this is part of my geodatabase right now, I can right click and I can say add to current map, or my favorite thing, because, hey, let's face it, I want to save time. So I'm going to click on it. I'm going to drag and drop, and you notice my cursor now has a plus symbol. I drop that in there, and boom, I have got those water wells added to the map. Notice a couple of outliers out here that are actually handled by the county and by the state of California. So those are ones I might want to be conscious of. For this exercise, we're not going to worry about trimming those down. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back to my contents pane. I'm going to right click, and I'm actually going to zoom to layer. So maybe not the best perspective that we want to see or view that we want to see, but it's definitely zoomed in on each of these little dots that are the water wells within the city of Clovis. I'm going to wheel out just a little bit, center that a little bit, so we can kind of see what's going on. Again, there are the 2 water wells I mentioned that are controlled by the state. And here we have most of the municipal water wells in Clovis for this layer. I want to change the symbology. So another way we can change symbology is I can actually come back up here as previously mentioned and look at the feature layer. And I can choose symbology. If I didn't want to do that, as we've already seen, I can right click and I can come right here to symbology, get you to the same place. That symbology tab is going to pop out. I'm going to pin it so I can mess with it. Notice we've got a single symbol. Now, we did not talk about this with these polygons for the city of Fresno and the city of Clovis, but this single symbol gets me this symbol right here. It's applying a single symbol to every feature that exists within this feature class, within this layer. And if I choose the dropdown, you can see that. Draw using a single symbol. You note that there are several other options that I can mess around with. I can look at symbol your layer by category, so you can choose unique categories that would be pertinent to your fields that exist within the feature class. You could do graduated colors, draw using graduated colors, so you'll have a coloration or a color scale, fading in, fading out, bivariate colors, unclassed colors, all sorts of stuff we can do. Here's proportional symbols. You can even start making charts in here, or this is a new feature within ArcGIS Pro. You can start to draw a heat map. So it's an auto density that gets triggered. Let's actually take a look at that. I'm going to select that. I'm going to choose heat map. It's going to be applied. And now what it does is it's pulling in features that are relatively close to each other. So it's establishing a neighborhood. We can look at the radius at which these are looked at. So if I wanted to increase this, I don't know, let's take it to 150. And I apply that, it's going to say, nope, 100 is going to be your best. And it's going to go through and it's going to say, hey, look at this nice kind of smear, if you will, of green that's out there. So you might want to fiddle with this a little bit. Let's change that to 50, see what it does. And it's trying to pull in each of those features. Looks like it's already classified it as best as it can, and figure out, where are these grouped relatively close together. So that's a symbol that you could mess with. Heat map's kind of fun. For this data set, not exactly suitable. We can also update feature class symbols in here if we wanted to. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here and I'm going to choose graduated colors. Let's see what that looks like. So now we can see, like I said, you've got really just kind of this color scheme and color scale that's being applied. In this case, it's looking at the field within the attribute table for capacity. That's water pump capacity. Okay, so we could see that there. Let's change that. Let's look at proportional symbols. This is a good one, especially if we symbolize on capacity. And we look at the classes saying, hey, give me 5 classes. And we can see what's being thrown into the mix here. Okay, so a couple of different things that we can really mess around with if we wanted to. We could choose to exclude values. We could add null values. So all sorts of things that we can do in here if we wanted to mess around with this in any way, shape, or form. We could normalize it. Let's normalize, won't do any good. Capacity on capacity, right? Because now we're just back to a regular size shape. Or we can just say, hey, we want a percent of total. What do we want, right? We can really mess around with this all that we want to or need to, which gives us some good information. We can mess around with the template. We can mess with the size, all sorts of stuff that we can do within this layer, okay? Let's go back. Let's use graduated symbols in this case. This will be a different one, right? Graduated symbols are pretty nifty, and this is, for the most part, from a 101 type standpoint, saying, hey, I need to look at difference in volume, or I need to look at the difference in some value, then the graduated symbols are likely going to be what you're going to be after. Again, we are symbolized on pump capacity, so how much water can each of these wells pump out. We can see I've got an upper value and I've got lower values. So here's my lower value, less than 0. And then I've got anything less than 1940. Okay, so that means this is the maximum capacity assigned to these pumps within this larger symbol. I can also mess around with these labels. If I needed this to be something that was actually 0, I can double click on the label and I can put 0 in there, hit enter, and that changes the label. So coming back over here, on the left-hand side of the screen looking at contents, I can see I have now got 0 for that particular label. So you can really fiddle around with these, make it look nice, make it look the way that you want to as you mess with these things. Okay, so it's just a way of getting introduced to the symbology and how you can set it up. And again, trying to convey meaning. We're looking at pump capacity in this situation. So the larger the symbol, the easier it is for me to be pumping water out of the pore space in the subsurface. We could see where there are a couple smaller symbols again to point out, and even these little guys way out here and out here that have very little and next to no capacity. So I'm already starting to extract information from this data set just by how I've symbolized them. First of all, which of my pumps do not and which of my wells do not reside in the city of Clovis? Well, we've already seen that. I already pointed that out twice. Here's the third time. Guess the third time's the charm, right? Secondly, where are my higher capacity pumps within the city of Clovis? I can go through and I can look at those. And I've been able to address those two questions just by symbolizing in this case. So really good opportunity to go in, mess around with the symbology. You can do that based off of attribute fields. You can do that based off of different calculations that you make, and you can even program information into the symbols. Now, we're not going to get advanced with this programming. Again, this is an intro to ArcGIS Pro video, and so we're looking solely at the basics on how we can set symbology for a feature class or a layer within a map. The key being not just to make it look pretty or awesome, but also to convey meaning, as we have seen and witnessed with capacity for these water wells. Okay, so I'm going to leave you with that. We'll have another video that's going to be coming up that shows you how you can import and also how you can create your own symbology sets. Importing symbology sets is phenomenal. I've used it numerous times from the U.S. Geological Survey for geologic maps within ArcGIS Pro. So we'll catch you on the flip side of that. Look for that video on being able to import symbol sets or styles as they're called, and that'll be coming up really soon. In the meantime, turn back around, find a data set that you want to mess around with, find a data set that you'll find useful, and see what you can do about setting the symbols with that data set. See what data you can get and interpretations you can tease out of it. In the meantime, I hope you've had fun. Hope you've learned a lot from this. And I hope that you'll continue to look at our world, specifically geosciences, if you will, and how we interpret processes in our world all through the lens of GIS. Catch you in the next video.